Well, hi, everybody. This is Tim Bost with FinancialCyclesWeekly.com, and we're talking today about why doesn't financial astrology always work? It's a question that I've been getting recently from some of our subscribers, and so we wanted to address that in this special training here today. Now, I have to admit that I am biased here, and my experience is that actually it really does work, so we want to get clear about that right at the outset here. But we want to discuss several ideas in connection with financial astrology here today. We want to discover when it does work and when it doesn't, and then what's the difference between the two, and why is there a difference? Why are there times when financial astrology apparently doesn't function as it should? So to begin with, let's define a couple of terms here. When we talk about financial astrology, we are, of course, referring in a very broad and generic sense to the application of astrological principles, the understanding of planetary rhythms and cycles, the harmonics between planets, the angular relationships, and other astrological dynamics as applied to financial matters of any sort. It can be our personal finances. It can be the futures of corporations. We can be talking about international economic issues. We can be discussing the markets, the stock market, the commodities markets, the options markets, and so forth. So we have lots of different applications of financial astrology. It's a very broad subject. It's a branch of what we call mundane astrology, the study of astrology that impacts world events. And with financial astrology, we also relate it to the individual. For many years, I've worked with what I call person-centered financial astrology, with the understanding that what happens to us as individuals financially is pretty important. That's one of the things we're going to focus on here today as well. We distinguish that to astro-trading. Astro-trading is the application of financial astrology tools and techniques specifically to the markets. We want to be engaged in the markets in various ways. There are different strategies we can use in applying financial astrology to the markets, but we're concerned primarily with buying and selling at a profit, dealing with markets that have some kind of formal structure to them, and we call that astro-trading. So that's a big part of what we'll be focusing on here with this discussion today, but we wanted to be clear about the distinctions between those terms at the outset here. Now, financial astrology, as I said a moment ago, really does work, and it works at several important levels. First of all, it's a key tool that can help you identify and evaluate major money-making opportunities. Now, this applies whether or not you're engaged in the markets. It's very, very useful within the market context, but in your life in general, it can help you identify those times when you can bring more money into your life. That's a very, very significant part of what financial astrology does. It can also give you absolutely unshakable confidence, certainty, and financial security. Now, that's saying a lot because a lot of people that I talk to are kind of on shaky ground financially, at least in terms of their own emotions and their worries about money problems or potential money problems in their lives. So this is something that we look to financial astrology to kind of add to the mix. It can give us a little extra level of reassurance and an understanding that there is more than meets the eye here. There are things going on behind the scenes that can help us out and give us a greater clarity about what's going on financially. And along the way, it can provide simple, clear-cut ways for you to avoid losing money. Now, this is one of the most predominant fears that people have about money, the fear of losing what they have or not being able to get any more and running out of money. It takes different forms, different kinds of expressions, but the bottom line here is that if we use financial astrology correctly, it can help us figure out ways to avoid losing money or creating more wealth than we lose along the way, so to speak. So that's an important consideration. And then finally, and I think probably most importantly, financial astrology really works to open up ever bigger expressions of your inner personal power and your inner personal intelligence, your inner genius, if you will. This is a very, very important dynamic. We all have within us the capability of transforming our lives in positive ways, and we have the capability of learning the skills involved in astro-trading and in using our resources wisely and in expanding our wealth and our sense of abundance, our prosperity. All of that resides within us. Financial astrology astrology is a tool that can help us tap into that, and I think that's an important consideration here as well. But I think it's important that we include disclaimers along the way, and we'll be talking about some results in the markets here. We want to point out that all of those are actually what we've accomplished, but it doesn't mean that that can be done again. And, of course, all these benefits that we've just talked about, we have to say, but your personal results may differ. They will certainly differ from individual to individual, and a big, big difference here is whether or not you actually use financial astrology. If you just study it, if you talk about it, if you think about it, you don't get the same results from actually applying it. Now, unfortunately, there are also concerns if you do apply it, without the benefits of the astro-trading advantage. If you're in the markets, for example, you won't get the same kind of results if you don't bring astrology to bear. It's very, very demonstrable. People who use astrology in their trading as an adjunct to other trading techniques tend to have a greater level of assurance and confidence if they're using it correctly. But even if you are using financial astrology, there is that opportunity for messing things up along the way. If you don't use astrology in the right way, you probably won't get the results that you're hoping to get. And that's a very simple kind of thing here. The tendency is to try to apply astrology to the markets and to financial decision-making and various actions in trading, and to do so in incorrect ways that produce negative results or no results at all. It's kind of like trying to eat soup with a fork. And so that's why we put this picture here. It's kind of a distressing experience, but that's what we're trying to avoid here as we talk about it here today. So let's talk about, first of all, this first benefit that we mentioned from using financial astrology, the ability to identify and evaluate money-making opportunities. This is absolutely critical if we're going to change our financial futures in positive ways. Because planetary cycles repeat themselves at predictable intervals, we can observe the past correlations of those planetary cycles with market dynamics, and then use those observations of the correlations as the basis for forecasting future opportunities that are likely to come up in the markets ahead of us. So that's the core concept here, with applying astrology to the markets. We can look at what's happened before astrologically, we can compare that time-wise with what's happened in the markets, and we can say the same things are going to be happening again astrologically, so can we predict the outcomes with the markets on that basis? Now, this is exactly what we've been doing here for the last dozen years or so at financialcyclesweekly.com. We've managed a model portfolio of equities positions on a week-to-week basis, and as you can see, we've had a very good track record with that. Over the years, we have consistently outperformed the DJIA, the Dow Jones Industrial Average, and the S&P 500 Index. The Financial Cycles Weekly Model Portfolio has turned in a better return year after year after year, an average of about 35% a year, using financial astrology and astro-trading techniques. This is what we can do with this. But we have to be very, very careful with this. Again, the caveat comes in that you may not be able to duplicate the results yourself, and especially if you make some key mistakes in astro trading, then you're not likely to get these results at all. And that's what we want to focus on here today. There are a number of specific mistakes that a lot of newcomers to astro trading, and some veteran astro traders as well, make over and over again. We want to try to point those out and offer some ideas about alternative ways of managing situations. Now, the first mistake is the notion that we're going to call one size fits all. And, this is kind of a funny way of presenting that, but it is the key notion that we have here, that we can find one thing that happens in the markets and an astrological cause for that, and then assume that it can be transferred in other ways. When we fall into the one-size-fits-all fallacy, we try to apply the same planetary cycles, the same planetary phenomena, the different astrological signatures that occur to different markets, and assume that different markets will all respond in the same way to the same planetary dynamic. And things simply don't work out that way. For example, here, we've got a chart of the NASDAQ composite here. We had a solar eclipse that came up on the spring equinox in 2015. This red price bar and the arrow pointing to it here on the chart shows the date of the solar eclipse. And as you can see, the NASDAQ rose into that date. In fact, it gapped up into that eclipse date and hit a top and then backed off. So it was a very, very clear trend reversal date, exactly timed by the solar eclipse. This is not an unusual thing to see, by the way, in various market indices and in studying different markets and in trading them. We find this kind of thing occurring with some frequency, so we pay attention to it when it comes up. But we want to point out here that this same solar eclipse did not impact all markets in that same way. In fact, if we look here at this chart for crude oil, with the crude oil futures, we see that it began to trend upward about a week prior to that solar eclipse, and then as it did so, it kind of went into a period of congestion with a little bit of an upward bias after that point, but it did not have that same stark trend reversal that we saw in the NASDAQ. A very, very different kind of phenomenon at work with crude oil than with the NASDAQ. The same thing applied to the euro. If we look here at the euro USD contracts, as we moved into that period for a number of months, the euro had been declining, and basically what it did just prior to that eclipse was hit a bottom, began to level out, and it went into a trading congestion pattern, a range-bound dynamic there after that solar eclipse. But again, we don't see that profound change in trend that we saw with the NASDAQ. We can even look at the chart for an individual equity, in this case the chart for Coca-Cola Company. The solar eclipse here again came right after a rather sharp decline in price for Coca-Cola, but it had begun basing a bit and bottoming out for about a week prior to the eclipse. It continued to do so afterwards. Again, we don't see a noticeable and remarkable result from the eclipse itself. Now, sometimes we'll see eclipses have an ongoing effect through their resonant fields, but the point here is that we cannot apply the same phenomenon in the same way to all markets. We can identify significant astrological events. We have to look at each market individually. And the best way of handling this is to match the exact astro indicators with the strongest correspondences that they have to specific markets. So we apply specific astrological dynamics to individual markets based on our studies of those markets one by one, rather than making sweeping generalizations and assuming that one size fits all. Here, for example, is a chart of the S&P 500. We found again and again that Jupiter is a very strong influence on the S&P. We like to see what's going on with Jupiter because it provides some indication of trading channels and support and resistance for the S&P from time to time, and it's certainly worth checking out. It's not the only thing that impacts the S&P, but it is certainly one of those factors that we always take a look at as we try to determine what's happening with that particular market index. Now, when we look at the Dow Utilities Average, for example, we don't look at the same thing. We're using here the planetary price lines for Venus and for Uranus. And as you can see, Venus, the green lines here, are providing great trading channels for the stock, but the support and resistance are being indicated primarily by those horizontal orange Uranus lines. And looking at the DAX in Frankfurt, the German exchange here, we're looking at Venus and Pluto as being the ruling dynamics for that particular market. When we go back to crude oil, we can look here at Uranus and Pluto. We just went through that series of waxing Uranus-Pluto squares over the past couple of years, so their price lines were coming very close together in the fourth harmonic, and these proved to be very, very active areas for the crude oil prices, the fourth harmonic alignments of Uranus and Pluto. With gold, we like to track the Sun and Chronos. This is typically the one that gives us the strongest indication. We've looked at this on a number of occasions in different ways with the interplay of the Sun and Chronos with gold prices, and find that this is a very, very reliable indicator. There's some other factors we use with gold, but we always want to take a look at the interaction of the Sun with the trans-Neptunian factor Chronos as we study that. And with silver, we look at the Sun as well, but we use a different trans-Neptunian. Here, Poseidon gives us better indications of support and resistance zones for trading in silver. So again, we see that we have the individual correlations of specific planets or pairs of planets with particular markets, and we like to look at it that way. The second mistake that we can make, we call, hey kids, what time is it? And it's all about timing factors, specifically here, the tendency of many traders to overlook the important perspectives that can be provided by using multiple time frames in their trading. Now, this applies whether you are trading with astrology or not. You can always get something out of multiple time frames. We mention it because astrology is concerned with timing, and there are many astrological factors that coincide or correspond with these multiple time frame considerations. So we get a much richer idea of how to work with multiple time frames when we apply the astrological dynamics. Here's an example, the chart for McDonald's daily price bars. The question is, what's the trend right now? And as we look at this chart, we see basically a congested pattern. It's not a strongly defined trend going in either direction, so we may be a little bit uncertain about how to trade that. And if we instead use the planetary guidelines to make trading decisions based on higher time frame considerations, then what we start to do is look at higher time frames with the price bars. And the principle at work here is to always trade into a higher time frame. So if we're doing intraday trading, we're looking at 1 minute price bars throughout the day, but we're going to be looking at the daily bars for that same entity to see what that trend looks like, so we get a picture of what the bigger scale trend is. In this case, we were looking at the daily price bars here for McDonald's and questioning what direction the trend is going. If we switch over to the weekly price bars, we can see that for the past few months, there's been basically an uptrend in place based on these weekly bars. We can begin to define that. We can see that same area of congestion on the right side of that upward movement there. So it may be petering out, but it certainly hasn't broken through the support in that trend line that we've drawn kind of casually there on that chart. Now, if we go to a monthly bar depiction of the McDonald's stock, we get an entirely different picture. In this case, we can see that last upswing represented by that little uptrend that we showed in the weekly bars on the far right of the chart, but we can now determine that this is really part of an up and down swing in a confined trading range. It's kind of a rolling stock kind of effect here, dating back to, 2001, it looks like, on this chart, so that we've got for a number of years a long-term congested period with a well-defined range-bound trading for McDonald's based on the monthly price bars. So this essentially confirms what we're looking at the daily bars. We don't have a strong breakout here. We're going to be looking, if we want to look for a buying opportunity for this stock, for a breakout at all of these price levels, at all these time frames, rather. So the time frame consideration is an important one. Then we have the notion of vibrations, and we were talking about having good vibrations, and we want to have that as a realm of our experience in the markets, certainly, and in our personal relationships and our ability to have fun. We like good vibes when we can get them, but it's wrong if we fail to use the vibes, if we fail to look especially at the planetary harmonics and the resonant fields that are set up by planetary dynamics and as tools to analyze the price and time trends in the markets. Now, we talk here about harmonics, and this is the harmonic relationships of planets in terms of their angular relationships and the projections of those through harmonic fields. The resonant fields, we refer to events like the solar eclipse that we were talking about a few minutes ago. We mentioned at that point that with that eclipse point, wherever that falls in the zodiac, that becomes a sensitive point for many months afterwards, and creates a resonant field around the point of a former location of a planetary phenomenon. This is a very important consideration. So we want to learn then how all of these techniques work so that we can apply the power that resides in the law of vibration. This is what drives all of nature. It's what drives the markets. It is what drives human relationships and our ability to advance materially and intellectually and spiritually as well. So we apply the power of the law of vibration, and when we do that, we can begin to discover hidden market dynamics. For example, we had back in February a Mercury station. Mercury went direct on the 11th of February in 2015, and it impacted a number of financial astrology charts. This is a chart for General Electric. We put it on a 90-degree dial, though, because even if we looked at a normal astrological chart, we could see the connection with the planet Mars with that Mercury station, Mars in the GE chart. But as we look at this from a harmonic perspective, the 90-degree dial gives us a fourth harmonic projection of that chart, and what we see is that it's activating the midpoint structure of Uranus and Apollon at the same time. This is a very, very strong indicator of positive sudden change, and it led us to begin to look at accumulating the stock and adding potential long positions about 2 months before the stock suddenly gapped upward dramatically, gained I think 11% or so in one single trading day. So I mean, what happens here is we get advance warning by looking at these hidden dynamics revealed by the planetary harmonics when we use those, when we put them to work. Here's another chart, trading chart, that shows the multiple price levels. What we have here are the planetary price lines, in this case for Uranus and for Pluto, with the GE price chart over a period of some time, and we see how it has defined support and resistance and the midpoint of the trading channel. If you are not familiar with the planetary price lines, you may look at this and say, oh, this is kind of like a Bollinger Band projection. It functions in much the same way, but what's actually happening here is that these are different price points projected by this planetary pair that coincides with the price action in GE. So again, the harmonic studies can give us multiple price levels that we need to be looking at, and this is very, very helpful in terms of projecting the direction of a trade and where we are looking at entry and exit points and so forth. So we can discover these harmonics and thereby learn a lot more about the inner workings of the markets. So let's deal with this question of the confidence, the level of clarity and certainty that we can have in our working in the markets and in our financial affairs, and that sense of financial security that can come from using financial astrology. One of the big challenges here, though, as we try to reach that level of confidence, is almost the tendency to overdo it. It's the idea that we can hit a perfect bullseye every time, whether we're Annie Oakley or not. That every shot is going to hit true here. With the expectation that all your forecasts will be 100% accurate just because you're using astrology and analyzing the markets is a big, big fallacy, and unfortunately a lot of people want to believe that. I've got the inner secret here. I know how things have to work out because I see what's going on astrologically, so I'm going to be right 100% of the time. Unfortunately, things don't always work out that way. In fact, most of the time they don't work out that way. The more confident we are that we're 100% right, the more likely we are that we're going to be wrong somewhere along the line there. So what we want to do instead is evaluate past astro indicators to discover the exact relationships that have gone on in the past between the markets and the astrological phenomena, and then we can determine that on a statistical basis. By doing back testing, we can find the exact probabilities of upcoming market events. For example, we can look at the S&P 500 index, the Standard & Poor's index there, and by going back and looking at the price history of the S&P, we can find times when various planetary phenomena have occurred before, and we can find multiple iterations of this. And we look at a particular planetary alignment, and we say, okay, we've got 28 examples of this or 35 examples of this in the history of the S&P, depending on what we're looking at. There may be more or less than that, but we like to have enough examples to be statistically significant. Once we do that, then we can go in and examine what has happened in the past and determine the likelihood then, based on the probability of what's happened and how many times it's happened in the past, of this happening again with the S&P the next time this particular planetary alignment comes along. So we can look here at the Sun Admeta's waxing semi-square and say that there's a 59% likelihood when we have a Sun Admeta's waxing semi-square, a 45-degree angle between those two planetary bodies, that the next day the S&P, or next trading day, the S&P will be up in price. And so we can get this sense in terms of immediate price gains in the S&P based on our back testing that way. That heliocentric Mars-Zeus waxing quincunx, the 150-degree angle between Mars and Zeus, the transit tuning, is very, very significant there. 73.5% likelihood of higher prices. That's one that I'd be inclined to take a chance on. That's a pretty good percentage there, good odds. The odds are in our favors. Now, if we look a little farther down toward the bottom of this list that we put up, the heliocentric Venus Chronos waxing semi-sextile, 36% chance of higher prices means that there's a much greater likelihood of lower prices coming after that. And with the heliocentric Mars-Jupiter waning square, 31% chance of higher prices means that we have a 69% likelihood that prices will drop after that particular planetary alignment occurs, at least in the S&P. And we want to remind you here that we apply this backtesting on the S&P doesn't mean the same thing will apply to gold or to the stock for GE or to the NASDAQ or anything else. This has to be done individually for each market that we want to trade. So the next big mistake that we can make is simply trying to put a square peg in a round hole. We have added a lot of cautionary notes here about trying to apply the planetary indicators to all markets uniformly, but we can also do a mismatch of planetary cycles to the actual dynamics that we see and experience in the markets. This is more of a timing dynamic, and this is where a lot of traders can make very, very serious mistakes. For example, if you are day trading in any market, whatever it is that you're day trading, and you're tracking things astrologically, and you read that there's a big square between Jupiter and Saturn, let's say, and then you say, well, this could impact the markets tomorrow, so I want to figure out how to trade that during my trading activity tomorrow, you might as well wrap it all up and go home because we can't expect to get useful information for day trading out of cycles of Jupiter and Saturn. Why? Because Jupiter has a 12-year cycle and Saturn has a 29.5-year cycle. The two meet in conjunction once every 20 years, so this is far too slow a time frame to apply to the dynamics of intraday price movements in the markets. That's what we're doing with day trading. So we don't have a match there. It's a mismatch between the two. The right way is to connect the faster moving planets to our swing trading efforts if we're in a trade for 7 or 8 trading days, something like that, or to our day trading if we're doing intraday work in the markets. And we use the slower planets for working with the longer term cycles in the markets and our longer term positions in the markets. Just as a quick reminder here, when we talk about fast planets, we're looking at Sun, Moon, Mercury, Venus, and Mars. Slow would be Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, Neptune, Pluto. The comet Chiron we like to factor in as well. And we use the trans-Neptunians. These are 8 additional planets outside of Pluto that we take into consideration in our work here at Financial Cycles Weekly as well. All these are very slow-moving bodies. So the next notion here that we can trip ourselves up with, and this is always a little strange to me when it happens, the idea that no man is an island, John Donne notwithstanding, the notion here is that I can use astrology by itself or in a vacuum. If I'm using astrological tools and methods only and trying to do my forecast, and that's the only thing I'm relying on, I am almost certain to be wrong, and I'm almost certain to have it cost me a lot of money. And this is a big factor for a lot of individuals. They get excited about astrology. They try to use it by itself. It doesn't work well that way. The best use of financial astrology is in combining it, combining the astro indicators with the tools and the techniques of technical analysis, in which we look at stock market charts or the charts for commodities, whatever we're trading, and the fundamental analysis. We're concerned with the earnings reports and the structure of the company and the market for the products it sells and so forth, and doing the fundamental analysis. We combine all of these, and then when we use the astrological factors, we get an additional confirming dynamic that gives us a higher level of confidence that can make the difference that we're talking about in having that kind of confidence and having that level of financial security. All of these things, if we use it in the right way, give us a greater level of certainty. And we also, as noted here, we also add common sense. We like to pay attention to what's going on in the real world and what the markets are actually doing, rather than trying to expect the markets to fit our astrological expectations here. That's where we can really mess things up if we're not careful. Now, this whole idea of how do we avoid losing money, we should give that a little bit of attention along the way, because I know in talking with a number of you and getting emails and corresponding back and forth, this is a big concern for a lot of people. How do I keep the money I got? How do I avoid losing money? And one of the biggest problems here, I think, is that too many of us are willing to see the possibilities for money making through rose-colored glasses. And with rose-colored glasses, of course, we have an unduly optimistic view of everything, and this applies when we are looking at astro-trading systems, or any other kind of trading systems for that matter, that do not tell us about or account for the losing trades that result from that system, because every system will have them. So we get all kinds of outrageous claims, and it may be about the fact that this will never give you a loss, or you'll make an outrageous amount of money in a very short period of time, or that we've got some kind of market secret that is absolutely foolproof. Whenever you hear those kinds of claims, immediately your antennae should go up, and you'll be a little bit suspicious. But you can always provide this one litmus test and ask the question, what about the losses in your system? Whatever it is, whether it's a training program, a trading system, a black box, an advisory service, tell me about the losing trades that you've had, because that's an important part of understanding how well this really works. If they say we're right, 87% of the time, then tell me about the other 13%. How big are those losses, and how do you account for that? And what happened with those. So we need to take off the rose-colored glasses, essentially, there, and instead choose astro-trading systems and approaches that produce net profits, which are based on both winning trades and losing trades. Now, that's what we do here at FinancialCyclesWeekly.com. I mentioned, of course, before this model portfolio that we've had year after year of consistent outperformance of the markets. We're very, very pleased with the results that we've gotten, but it's important to understand that in getting those results, we've had losing trades along the way. For example, back in 2012, we had a total of 186 trades with 93 winners and 93 losers, exact even split that year. Just as many losses as winning trades, but our winning trades brought in an average of $544, and losing trades $217 in terms of the average for each time we took a loss. So we ended up with a net profit here on a $100,000 model portfolio of over $30,000. A very nice, solid return for the year, based on having as many losses as we had winning trades. And so that's how this kind of approach actually works in the real world. This was the application of financial astrology. Same thing in 2013. A little hard to read this. In 2013, we had a total of 209 trades, 102 winners, 107 losers. A few more losers than winners that year. Net profit for that year was $42,600. A very, very strong performance. Even though we lost in more trades than we were winning, we showed a very, very nice return for that year. And in 2014 as well, we had 215 completed trades that year. 104 winners, 111 losers. Once again, more losing trades than winning ones during that course of that year. A net return there of $28,482. Not quite as strong as the previous year, based on our $100,000 model portfolio, but a respectable return nevertheless. And we certainly outperformed both the S&P and the Dow Jones Industrial Average along the way. Now, note here that the average winning trade was $499, right at $500. The average loss was about $212. So we have basically a 2.5 to 3 to 1 ratio between the size of the win, size of the losses in these typical years. That's how we're able to manage having more losing trades than winning trades, and we make a lot of money along the way doing that. Now, we willingly take these small losses in our trading activity so that we can be in position. In other words, be in the markets so that we can get those larger gains when the opportunities arise for them, and we continue to do that to get consistent net profits year after year after year with our trading program. So that's how this works in the real world. The other notion about losing money is what we call being Pennywise and pound-foolish, trying to measure things out a little bit too precisely and worrying about the losing of money. And what happens here, the problem is that we tend to forget astrology when we get into counting our pennies and worrying about are we going to make it or not. So we ignore the role that astrology can play in more effective money management, especially in our trading. Now, if we can time things astrologically, we can figure that out for ourselves financially in a lot of contexts, but this is especially true in the trading environment. We can use planetary price factors to determine the high probability support for us if we're in long positions, and use those to set our stop loss orders on trades and to protect our trading capital. And And it's most important here that we preserve our trading capital so we can go on and trade again another day. That's what money management is all about in the markets, and it's what we do with astro trading as well. The idea here, though, is that we can use planetary factors to determine how to set those stops, or to confirm for us where we would want to set stops in a particular trade. Here's the chart for Infosys Technologies, and we're using the planetary price lines here, fourth harmonic Venus and the trans-Neptunian Apollon. The Venus, or the green lines, showing the trading channels that this has gone up in, basically. But Apollon is giving very, very clear support and resistance along the way, so we're very interested in that. And if we're interested in entering a long position in this stock, then we'd be looking here at this price line. It's a little bit thicker than some of the others. That means it's a first harmonic Apollon price line. And note that it comes right along the bottom where this stock has found support in this particular zone several times over the last couple of months here. We've seen it test this support repeatedly. We think that's going to be a very significant level, and so we would use that using the confirmation provided by the planetary price line to set our initial stop if we're entering a trade on the long side at that point. And then, of course, we manage the stops after the fact. So let's talk finally a little bit about this notion of what financial astrology can do to awaken your interpersonal power and kind of tap into your innate internal intelligence so that you can get the full benefit from that, because that's a big part of why we trade here. It's not just about making money, it's also opening up our full potential as individuals, and that's really what we're all about here. It's kind of our secret mission here at financialcyclesweekly.com. We don't talk about that too much, but it's really, really important, and I think you'll find it important as well. Now, the challenge is that for a lot of people, when they set out to make changes in their lives or to try to improve their financial circumstances, they want to have it happen all at once, and so they want to buy the winning lottery ticket. And I'm always amazed. I have to tell you here that I'm astonished at the number of clients I've had who've explained to me that their retirement plan is to buy a lottery ticket every week, and I can tell them all about the odds and the lack of likelihood of it making any money for them and the foolishness of it. And for some people, this is a strategy they want to pursue because they're looking for get-rich quick strategies, and that certainly applies to trading as well. Many people involved in astro trading want get-rich-quick strategies that will transform the personal financial picture right away. Let me take one great trade, give me the one thing to buy today that I can turn around and sell tomorrow for 1,000% profit and retire and never have to worry about money again. That's what they're looking for from astrology, and they can keep looking because what really works here is consistent dedication to risk management and to high probability astro trading to get these solid net results over time. This is the way it actually works in the real world, and so this is what we're trying to offer in this training here for you today, because it is an important lesson to learn. As I mentioned before, we do the back testing to determine the probability of entering the trades, and then we also manage the trades using initially the astrological factors, but on a week-to-week basis. For example, with our model portfolio here at Financial Cycles Weekly, we're looking at equities trades, and we'll typically have 8 or 10 positions on in the markets at any given time, and then once a week we come back in and we raise the stops, or we adjust the stops. If it's a short in a trade, then we'll lower the buy stop. And what we're doing here is reducing the risk in the trades, locking in profits when we have them, and eventually the markets will take us out when we get stopped out of these positions, but we maximize our winning capabilities this way, and at the same time maintaining a very defensive position that enables us to protect our trading capital. So this is what we mean by money management and being diligent about that. And that's preferable to trying to do the lottery ticket approach and saying, let me just get one thing right and everything else will work out fine. We work very systematically at getting things right and improving our situation week by week, day by day, in order to get the results. So finally here we want to talk about the other factors overlooking the fact that this is all boils down to an inside job. I said that our secret mission here is really working with you on an individual level to understand what makes you tick and open up that level of personal financial potential and that incredible genius that's within you in order to get the dramatic results that you'd like to have in the markets and elsewhere. But it really is an inside job. It's what happens in your skull that makes the biggest difference of all. So the obvious mistake here that a lot of traders make, even if they're engaged in astro trading, is that they fail to look at their own horoscopes, that they fail to look inside themselves, to examine what makes them unique as a trader in terms of the inner dynamics. What kinds of patterns do they bring to the markets themselves? What kinds of expectations and biases are there? Failing to do that, they always fail to bring in the optimum level of performance from their trading. The right way to handle this, obviously, is to understand that success in astro trading is rooted ultimately in your own ability to tap into that interpersonal power, that inner genius that you have, that intelligence that resides within you and that can create the amazing results for you in and out of the markets. And of course, in doing that, what we look at is the personal horoscope. We have lots of materials available and teach classes on how to find the money in your horoscope, and put a lot of emphasis on this as part of our work with astro traders, especially in one-on-one coaching programs, because this is an important key. Then we can look at the transits as well to that chart and understand the opportunities and potential challenges that arise. So when you know how to find the money in your horoscope, you can remove the blockages that you may have to financial success. The horoscope can help us identify those blockages and then get them out of the way. You can discover the right kinds of risks that are appropriate for you, whether you should be involved in the markets or in, taking chances in real estate or just doing creative projects, whatever it may be. You can decide, for that matter, based on your horoscope, whether it's the best for you to be trading or investing or both or neither. And all of us have different proclivities in that department, and you want to be cognizant of that before you try to get involved in something that you're really not cut out for. You want to be able to understand your money habits. That's a part of it. You know, what are my biases, my preconceptions? What do I habitually do to make sure that I'm out of money on a day-to-day basis? We each have our strategies for that. And of course, it can open up new financial horizons for you as well when you know how to find the money in your horoscope. So we encourage that knowledge, whether you take our class on how to find the money in the horoscope, study it on your own, or if you already know about that. This is a key part of the appropriate or the best application of astro trading. So in a nutshell then, financial astrology really does work to help you identify and evaluate major money-making opportunities, to give you this kind of confidence and certainty at an unshakable level, and ultimately a sense of financial security as well once you discover how that works for you, because it can provide simple, clear-cut ways for you to avoid losing money, or at least to understand that taking small losses is not about losing money. It's about being in a position to have the opportunity to make more money, and that's a critical part of that dynamic for you. And it can also, of course, open up these ever greater expressions of your inner personal power, your inner genius, your inner intelligence here that can make all the difference for you. So we want to remember a couple of factors here in closing. First of all, if you want to trade, please be sure that you bring to the table the astro trading advantage. Don't ignore these tools for astro trading. Lots of people take a quick look at astro trading techniques and say, well, it doesn't work all the time, so why should I bother with it, or it's too hard to learn. The fact is, you can master financial astrology. You can become skilled at astro trading. You can learn how to do this, but it's helpful if you take a systematic approach, if you have a little bit of guidance along the way, and if you take it one step at a time. None of it is hard to learn. Some of it takes a little bit of discipline in applying it on a practical level, but it is important not to try to grab it all at once. You take it systematically one step at a time, and that's what mastery is all about. And this is something that you're very, very capable of doing, and you can get those benefits. I've seen it happen again and again with the people that I've coached, and in my own experience as well. And the idea here with sharing this information with you today in this training is that we've tried to give you an opportunity to eliminate some of the biggest mistakes that you can make in astro trading. And if you eliminate everything that we've listed here today in terms of the mistakes, then your chances of success are already enormously improved with astro trading, because the first thing to do is to get some of the stuff out of the way that blocks us from achieving where we want to go and what we want to achieve. And that's what we've tried to do here today in talking about these potential traps for you in astro trading. And finally, with the right direction, I want to personally assure you that if you have the right guidance, you can absolutely rely on your own interpersonal power and your own intelligence, your own personal genius. And it will guide you to make the right financial decisions and get you to the greatest financial heights that are possible for you. And again, that's part of the secret mission that we're up to here at Financial Cycles Weekly. We want to see you succeed. So I appreciate your taking time to share this information with me today. And if you can eliminate some of these mistakes as you approach astro trading, then I am confident that you'll be well on your way to achieving the success that you so richly deserve. This is Tim Bost with Financial Cycles Weekly. Thanks so much for taking time to join me.